Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for joining me for another episode of the Power to Pivot podcast. I am here today with Mark Anthony Rains. How are you today? Thanks so much for joining me.
I'm okay, thank you. On a cold-ish day in England, where we're still okay with the coronavirus. We're not quite out of it yet, but that's like everybody anyway. So,
I was going to ask how things were. So it's the first day of spring here in Philadelphia. Um, we have some beautiful sun. Mostly the snow has melted. But how are things in terms of corona over there?
well, as you know, we're doing quite well the vaccine at the moment. We've got over 20 plus million people vaccinated with the first dose,
Hmm.
which is about half the country. Obviously, we're a bit worried about Europe because there seems to be possible third wave coming, but I'm not too worried about that at the moment because I'm pretty sure the vaccine's pretty resilient to most things. It's just like everything, you just got to take a gamble in life. I think America will be in the same spot. Sometimes you just got to take that gamble coming out because you can't stay potentially in lockdown forever and a day.
You know, it's interesting that you say that. I agree with you. I think that at the end of the day, there's a way that we can create almost a new way to be where it's normal and we can still live our lives and move on while also still being safe in the process. And I think for the most part, like I'm noticing here, um, I think more and more people are doing that. Like we still have the masks that are required everywhere we go. I'm happy to see that, small businesses and restaurants are opening back up and people are coming out. And it's a little bit different because the restaurants aren't as full as they used to be. They have the social distancing, so they're half capacity right now. Um, and in some cases they're half staffed too, with reduced menus. So I think for the we're figuring it out.
I think we as a human species, if you look at history, I'm not a scientist, but I look at history, all the events we've suffered, like world wars, pandemics before, we've always come out of it pretty robust, really. I mean, it took a few years. I mean, you look at World War Two, every country came out of it. Took a couple of years to come out of it fully,
Hmm.
and then we sort of developed back into normality, whatever normality is.
Hmm.
But I think that if the one thing we have to stay on is hope, and it's the hardest thing to keep up.
This is true because I remember a year ago, 'cause actually, yeah, we're just about a year out from when everything just completely shut down, and it was like nobody knew what was going on, and um, there were runs on the grocery store, and people were stockpiling toilet paper. Here, I don't know if you had that issue in England, but here in the United States, toilet paper was at a shortage. And but I think over time, like it is a message. Like you have to have hope and you look to what could be, the bright side of things. And that's really an important thing to remember because we get to choose how we see it, right?
Well, that's the most important part. I think I've talked to a lot of people, and I admit that I've had what I term as a pandemic blues, where you have too much. The news overwhelms you too much. You've got too much, like one bit of good news and 10 parts bad news, and it just gets to you. You're only a
Mhm.
human being. We all like a bit of good news.
Every now and then it's helpful, yes. Well, but here we go. So we're a year out. We're here. I think that it was important because every person on the planet was impacted. It's a message of hope, but I think also a message of how, while the world's so big, it really is kind of small at the same time. It didn't matter where you were. You and I have had very similar experiences through this, um, because of it. So, and we're in completely different continents. So I think that there's something to be said about that when we think about humanity.
Well, I think that as you look at every country, we've all sort of, although we may have dealt it in different ways, we've all learned that we have to act as one. Though sometimes there's been a bit of a who to are over Europe about the Oxford jab. I think they realised that they've made a mistake by saying that they shouldn't do this and shouldn't do that because their uptake isn't very good.
Hmm.
And obviously that's an impact on their situation. And I think they'll wake up and realise that we have to act all as one, because if we don't, if we keep getting, like you say, we keep acting all as individuals. It's a bit like the Star Trek theory, isn't it? I think we're coming. If you ever watched Star Trek, the theory is that we all come together as one nation.
Hmm.
Although we really hate each other, but we don't. We come in, but there's a society without money. Doesn't that sound familiar?
Hmm. Yeah. I think that it's an important conversation because we are all one. And yet we still like our labels and our separation and almost like an us versus them mentality. And that doesn't really get us very far. I mean, I guess as individual groups it could, but ultimately, I think what we've learned is over time as a society that doesn't really lead to progress.
Well, you look at the different movements that happen. Like we had the Black Lives Matters, and we've had the women over here because a case of I have to word it correctly, a suspected policeman has maybe committed a crime on another woman,
Hmm.
where the woman may have possibly died of that crime. That's what it is. That could got out
Hmm.
that quickly. And there was lots of protests about it. But and then we got a lot of women having the attitude, all men are like that. And I just thought, well, no. Years ago, I went out my way to make sure that if a girl was on her own, I would say, oh, do you want me to walk you home to the bus stop?
Hmm.
Or do you want me to walk you to the taxi rank just to make sure you're okay?
Hmm.
Nowadays, that would be like, what do you think you're doing? You think, well, I'm just being what my granddad always told me to do, or my dad always told me to do. If
Yeah.
someone's on, if a woman's on their own, make sure they get home safe. And I think don't get me wrong, these crimes do happen, but I don't think we're ever going to be a time where these things never happen.
Hmm. I think it's important to keep it in perspective. You bring up, a good point. I think overall people want to do the right thing, but then there's those stigmas attached to if I do the right thing, is it going to be perceived in the wrong way? Because, it kind of the one thing is you're talking, I keep hearing one bad apple spoils the bunch, a couple of bad situations that hit the media, and all of a sudden, you know, our mindset is completely shifted into something else and we forget who we are at the core, which is we're all people. um and you know we can approach people with a level of compassion, a level of even if we don't get it, you know what I mean, like we don't necessarily have to know, but having an open mind, there's something to be said about that.
I think we've got to learn from history as well. I mean, we've had when we look back at old attitudes, I think from now, what people don't realise that 10, 20 years from now, you'll get somebody looking back going, my God, how did they get away with that program? They couldn't
Mm-hmm.
have done that. They could have done that. Things change. It's just how humans are. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, what we thought was funny in the 70s, we don't think so funny now in the 2000s.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, we just had a different mindset, and
Mm-hmm.
people can criticize it as much as they want. I'm not gonna defend it because some of it was bad. I'm not gonna say it wasn't, but that was then, and you can't take it away. It's no point saying, "Oh, don't show it, don't read it, don't do this," because I think, in other words, you don't learn from that. You can't. You can go back to that program and go, "Ah, that's where they went wrong. I won't do that then."
Mm-hmm. I think learning, we have to learn. And I hope that at this point we've learned our lessons, some for now, you know, and we'll see. And I think too, you know, when everything closed down and some of the pollution started to clear up, and, it makes you think like, are we going to learn when I think about today being the first day of spring, right? And, you know, taking care of the planet and making sure that we're doing the right things for the the actual planet itself too. I mean, that's another mindset shift that we had to look at with all of this because um I think of the cities where the smog had kind of cleared because no one was on the roads, and you could finally see clearly. And it's just amazing to me how we could lose sight of that. And ultimately, if we can, shift our mindset back to the things that are the most important, I'm hoping that that helps us step forward in evolution and progress and really create some good positive changes. I think it's happening, but I mean, I think you'd agree it takes time, right?
Yeah, it's like everything. I mean, you're going to see the bad. I mean, it's media's job to see the bad, isn't it? I mean,
Yes.
good news doesn't sell. I mean, let's be honest about it. You say that walk across the road, man won £1 million by picking up lottery ticket. Go, oh yeah, great. Man got run over, got knifed, got shot. Oh my God! Wow, what happened there then? It's the morbid curiosity of human beings. It's since the days of the gladiators and God knows when.
Is there a way to shift that, do you think? Do you think it's a matter of just making sure that we start finding new ways to sell the good news and get it out there? Like, what's it going to take?
I think we just got to, yes, do both sides of the story. I think what we could do is that you have one lot of news that you know is just that's going to be in-depth media and they have to challenge things and whatever. And I think sometimes they just could just do for experiment only, and if it doesn't work for a month, all the TV stations in the world just have one program a week. That's just good news.
Hmm.
Only for half an hour. You don't have to do much, but just try it out to see if it would work. And if it doesn't work, fine, we tried it.
Hmm. Yeah, what harm could it do? And I think if we could do that, maybe we could do that. Um, oh, the wheels are turning now. But I, I think that even if on a global scale it didn't pick up, even if I think about the fact that individuals, there's something to be said about, maybe just touching that one person that needed it. Because you never quite know what the effect is of the things that you put out there, right? So maybe it does reach that one person and it kind of then spiders out, maybe in a smaller, like a slower rolling bubble of
Well,
change. But
there was a good story in the paper the other day. It wasn't here. It was some up country. These goats have escaped from a field, and they haven't been. They're all male goats, and they haven't been removed their parts, as they would say. So they're all active. So they're trying to catch these goats
oh no.
going around, going around everywhere, going. And they're only little goats, but my God, the horns on them are like quite lethal. I'm thinking, oh, I don't fancy that job.
Very true. So tell us a little bit about you. You're an author, you're a podcaster. Tell us a little bit about your background.
Well, basically, I I'll tell you a little bit about how I got into podcasting first. I
Hmm.
started back in 2017. I didn't like video at the time, and I thought, what could I try? I thought I'd give podcasting a go because that seemed to be the thing that most people can get into. I every podcast I've ever done is from my smartphone and my Amazon Fire tablet. I've never done anything more technical than that. And I started on a station a program called Podbeam, but I started to pay for the extra um, megabytes, but that ended up being too costly, so I came off of that, and I ended up with I think it was when I left about 30,000 downloads. Then I went on to Anchor FM, which is a freebie site, but I can't get it for some reason now. It doesn't work so well on my smartphone. It could be to do with the app itself. It could be an old app. I don't know. But anyway, I left there, and that was 60,000 downloads. And I'm now on Red Circle Podcasts, which is like a freebie thing, but you have to promote everything yourself. You have to do all your own work, where you promote it, you produce it, you share it, you do everything yourself. So it's a good learning curve, really, how
Hmm.
to get yourself done. And I think I think podcasting is still like the punk rock of radio.
I
We can
like
still
it.
do. We can still talk about things that most people they can sort of talk about on national television, but they have to be wary of time constraints and obviously advertising and news. Where on podcasting, you don't really have to worry about that, and not, unless you've got sponsors, obviously. But
Hmm.
most of us haven't. We just plow along in a little room somewhere.
Yeah. What do you think is the biggest lesson you've learned through the experience? Because it is a learning curve. I remember back when I launched, and well, it's interesting how this podcast, if you look back to the early episodes, it has completely changed. And but I remember not knowing anything and still going, I'm going to do it, and what I know now. So for you, what has been the biggest learning experience or the biggest lesson?
Biggest lesson I think is I learned to share more on my blog, and then I get better response than just put it on YouTube and my station. I've realised that if you share it on a blog post, you get more response.
Hmm.
Because sometimes people don't always look out for you on YouTube because there's so much competition. It's hard to fight it.
Hmm.
And obviously, podcast stations. I mean, anyone that listens into you, it's quite an achievement. I mean, my theory is just if anyone's interested in it, just go for it. It's not that hard to set up. Just talk about something you're passionate about. And
Hmm.
even if you get one listener, don't worry about it. Because that one listener might go, you know him down the road. He knows what he's talking about.
Yeah.
Go listen to him.
Yep. So tell me, I think it's more about the fear in our heads, right? Like for me, I think I wrestled with the idea couple of weeks. I think I did a podcast, like I was a guest on somebody's show, and which was a scary experience, the first couple that I did. And then I was kind of like, oh, I kind of like this. Can I do this? And I would be like, yeah, I can do it. Nope, I'm not going to do it. I kind of did this back and forth with myself for a little while. And then I went, well, the heck with it. Like, why not? Because I'm just going to go with it. And so I put out a couple of episodes, but I was still really afraid. And I think that's ultimately what stopped me because I took a break, long break, for a little while. Um, and I guess I kind of needed that too because I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do with the show. I just kind of knew I had something to say, but it really came down to the fear, right? I mean, well, maybe was that for you? I don't want to assume.
No, no, no. I just went for it. I just thought, well, I've got nothing to lose. I'm only a small fish in a very big pond. And I just thought, well, even if I'm just talking to myself, it's a nice little hobby to have.
Hmm.
And that's how I did it, basically. And then I got into writing. I started writing. My first book I ever did was with a collaboration with an occultist called Simon Robb,
Hmm.
and he wrote the occult bit, and I wrote the martial arts bit. And it's called Cartoon Occult Martial Arts. It's a very weird book. I did something. I did the illustrations as well, and
Hmm.
that got me inspired. It got me into the habit of how to write and how to do it properly. So it was a good experience. So I thought, oh, why not give it a go? I mean, most of my books are more horror, come comedy, come paranormal, come kind of stuff.
Hmm.
But I decided to write my own autobiography, and the reason behind that is because I suffer from a thing called small vessel disease of the brain, which means you have problems with your cognitive skills like memory and speech and movements and all sorts of wonderful, weird things. It's normally as you get a little bit older, but I'm not in that category. I'm coming up to 60 next year, so I'm a bit earlier than most. I've only got I've got a milder form than most people have, but I like to talk about it because it makes people realize that it could happen to them. So I thought, why not write a book about myself? And I thought, might be some people interested. So I call it Diary of an Essex Weirdo because I come from Essex originally,
Hmm.
and I put my little bits about. I wrote it a little bit about my family, a bit about me, a bit about how I met my wife, my suicide attempts, my getting married and the difficulties we had with our husband. Not all the details, obviously. I left some out
Hmm.
because I didn't want to upset the family too much. And I basically did it. got a fairly good response from it. Most people are giving the book away free to quite like it.
Hmm.
I'm not too worried if I don't make big money out of it. I just like people to, if it inspires someone else to think, oh, I got a story I should write about.
Hmm.
I think that's. I mean, I've got. It's full of writing mistakes and grammar mistakes everywhere. An English teacher probably pulled their hair out. Oh my God, what the hell have you
an,
done?
an
That doesn't
editorial
go there.
nightmare. No, I mean I've read it. I think it's a great book. So I think we're very similar in the sense of being willing to share those experiences. And for me, it's a matter of I don't want people to go through it. I want people to realize that they're not alone, and it gives people things to think about in how the experiences that they have gone through for themselves. I think your book, I appreciated it very much. The fact that you wrote it, you were willing to share, the good, the bad. You really do put a lot of it, like the stuff out there, which isn't easy.
Well, no, no, that's why I thought. To be honest, I thought about it. And I thought, no, I've got to. I mean, obviously, as I said, I left bits out, but I didn't leave. I put in about my near-death experience, which is quite a big influence in my life because basically, if anyone's never heard of it, I'll tell them again. Basically, I had I was very ill. I was getting very dizzy, and the doctor said at the time he thought it was to do with my ear infection, but my wife obviously said no, it isn't that. They when they come, he smelled anatode, smelled my breath, and he called the ambulance out. I don't remember any of this, so I only go by my wife's accounts. And when the ambulance came, they tried to get blood sugar level. They couldn't at the first or the second time. The third time it's 124. So I went to Barnstable, North Devon Hospital, where I was half an hour in ED, then straight to ICU, where obviously I was put in a coma. I was in my coma for 3 weeks, and whilst I was in my coma, I heard a woman's voice I have not heard before or since, telling me to wake up, and I had the most overwhelming feeling I ever had to wake up. Now I know a lot of people. I say this a lot. A lot of people think it could have been my brain playing tricks, or it could be an hallucination of the chemicals. I accept that could be that, but my personal belief, and this is only my personal belief, so I would say that it was my guardian angel. And the reason why I call myself Ghostman, if anybody is interested, is that whilst I was in my coma, I was neither in this world or the next world. So therefore, I was a ghost.
Hmm. It's such a powerful story, and I I'm kind of with you. I've had experiences, well, I mean, the power to pivot. This is where you pivot. That was the first time I heard it. I was like in a camping trip. No one was there except me and one other person, and all of a sudden I look around and I was so loud and I was so aware in that moment. It was like it was just me and that voice. And I agree with you. I guess I could accept the fact, yeah, it could be my brain, like, okay, but I don't feel that. I feel like it was something bigger, something beyond me going, literally, wake up. Like, this is your moment to kind of get it or not. And if you're not, okay, but please do. And those moments are really powerful and profound.
Well, yeah, they are because I think sometimes. Well, when I had mine, I honestly believe, and I've talked to a few people that have had coma type experiences, and they agree with me. They all feel like we've touched something,
Hmm.
like a. I'm a great believer that we perceive our own heaven and our own hell because
Hmm.
we've all been influenced so much by whatever religion you believe in or whatever else you believe in. I think we've been influenced so much that when we finally go, like the Star Trek bit again, I like Star Trek because I like referring to it. It's the final frontier, you know. But man will boldly go, but unfortunately, I might not be becoming come back. I don't know unless it's reincarnation. I don't know about that. But anyway, that's what I think.
Hmm. Did the voice have a figure? Like, did you see a face, or was it really just that voice and that sense of presence beyond you?
It's just a voice and a sense of presence, really. I didn't see a face as such.
Mhm.
It was so strong. I mean, it was like literally like like saying to me to wake up, and like when you really want to do something and you can't control it,
Mm-hmm.
like your body comes overwhelmed with a sense of power that you don't know where it's coming from.
Mm-hmm.
And that's I wake up, obviously when you first come out of coma, it's like, oh, where am I? Just look around. All you hear is beeps of machines
Mm-hmm.
and doctors and all that. It took me ages to get rid of that sound of beep. If I heard a beep, it sort of triggered like a PSTD moment, sort of like a trauma, not like full on, but it took you back to that room. Even now, when I watch soaps, so I see the machine going beep, beep, beep. I'm sort of back in that room, sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. Once you did wake up, what was the reaction of the people around you as as you're sharing with them this experience?
Well, obviously, total disbelief. I mean, yeah, you got to be probably go, yeah, okay, mate, right, quick, take it down the loony bin, quick, come on. But you, it's like anybody who's ever gone through any experience. I mean, if you was there, they wasn't, so only you know the situation, and if you're willing to stick your nose out there and you're willing to keep saying it, they know you're sticking to what you're saying. You're not just going, oh well, I won't say it anymore because I'm getting a bit embarrassed because people like saying it's a load of bunkums. Kind of thing. You got to stick to your guns because that's what it is, isn't it? It's experience. It also breaks down a barrier because if you get the it helped me to do other things. You know, it got me more into the paranormal world. I started off in the world of cryptozoology, to believe it or not, because my friend of mine is a well-known cryptozoologist in UK called Jonathan Downs,
Mm-hmm.
and I used to live where he lives now, at Wolseley,
Mm-hmm.
and I volunteered to help him out, and and I always remember that I used to help him out on a thing called Weird Weekend. We used to do uh, carrying stuff and stuff like that. And I once won an award of a certificate and a painted plastic gold monkey.
Huh.
But it's that kind of event. It was like a fun kind of event
Uh-huh.
around the world of cryptozoology. People go, oh yes, those weirdos. Yes, I know all about them.
Well, so I'm wondering, like, when you think back and okay, so you woke up and people are looking and thinking, okay, there's no possible way. Like no, you didn't hear anything. And of course, you did. Do you feel like it was a wake up call for you for your life? And how would you describe that? Like, is it really like the universe going, there's more
I
for you
think
here?
I think sometimes when you look back at it, at the time you didn't. If you can reflect a bit and if you can, yeah, perhaps it wasn't my time up yet. Perhaps that ticking clock up in the sky hasn't rung the alarm bell yet. Perhaps obviously it reminds you of mortality, obviously.
Hmm.
But I think it makes you more aware of things. It doesn't still stop you getting depressed or being. I suffer from depression. I suffer from paranoid thoughts. I've had lots of anxieties. I'm just a normal, average human being in some ways.
Hmm.
So it doesn't stop you that. I mean, I wouldn't say it magically cured me or anything. I wouldn't dare say that. But I think it's made me more aware that there's something there. I mean, I couldn't say what it was because as I say, what my definition is may be completely different from yours and from someone else's.
Hmm. I think you bring up an important point because it's not about the fact like you don't wake up and everything's magically better or fixed. Um, but there's this sense of maybe curiosity about what else is there. Because there's more. You woke up for a reason. Whether you could say it just wasn't my time, or I mean, you could say the doctors just did their job. Whatever you want to say, it doesn't matter. You're still here. So again, it's not the case of you have it all figured out. It's you're having this experience, and the experience continues. And it from that experience, though, you've turned it into um, a way to learn more. Like you are just diving in and learning about the writing process and the podcasting, and you're like totally open to all these new experiences, and you're willing to share. And I
Well,
think
yeah,
there's tremendous
yeah.
power there.
Well, I also, because of my friendship with my friend John, he does a like an alternative magazine called Gonzo Weekly online, and
Hmm.
he kindly lets me draw the cartoons on that. And yeah, I'm not saying I'm the greatest cartoonist in the world, but it's a great to have your work published, a sense of publication, isn't it?
Hmm.
To be
Uh,
recognised in this world is important.
Tell me about your creative process. Like, how do you approach art when you're sitting down to create, whether it's the drawing or the podcasting, or writing, for your books? Is there a way that you approach it, or you just kind of let it flow?
Well, if I'm writing a good horror story, normally in my best horror stories, I hate to admit this, is when people upset me a bit.
Hmm.
I think, aha, I'll get revenge on them. You wait, they're
You
going to
write
end
from
up
the
dead.
human experience.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm being honest. I mean, we all like that, innit? We could
Yeah.
get our revenge, but I could get my revenge back in a horror way. Uh, I mean, I've been a great fan of horror for a long time, since the days of Hammer Horror. And I once was a guest on an online horror show with a man called Bobby Gamunster,
Hmm.
and he did the weirdest interview I've ever done. He didn't have a microphone, he didn't have a camera, so I had to do the typing. He had to do the typing back, and I had to ask the questions and answer the questions myself.
Hmm.
But it inspired me to become like a horror host. I'm not like I do like my all my horror stories are like old public domain stories. I do write my own as well. I have lately redone some of my old horror stories to make them change them around a bit to so I can include the old because of my stories I can change them around, and I just like them because it's just a bit of escapism. That's all it is. I mean, I know we've got the real horror at the moment, but it's just nice to escape.
Do you think, what is it that makes a good horror story? Because I mean, there's certainly the element of the human factor, but I think about, I don't know, what do you think makes a good horror character, or
Well,
the plot?
I think a good horror story has to have the hero, the heroine, the monster, the bad guy, and
Hmm.
a good sense of slice of humor in it somewhere to
Hmm.
break the horror, so you don't always see it coming.
Hmm.
So you sort of like write something, this you mask the fact that something scary is going to come the next second.
Hmm.
You if you watch the old horrors,
Hmm.
the old classics like Lou Chaney and um, Bela Lugosi, there's always a little bit of humor in there somewhere,
Hmm.
you know, and like yeah, and they work because it's a story. And those are horror element. I mean, I know people like say, "Oh, what about blood and guts?" And all that. Yeah, that's there's nothing wrong with that. I watch them as well, but I do like a story film. Sometimes I like a horror that's got a good story
Hmm.
because then you're more invested in it.
Right, you can escape into the characters, and it's not just about having that next jump scare, or I think about the horror movies that I've gravitated towards, and I agree, they are the ones that have more of a plot to it, where I can kind of get immersed in the story, and then it's almost like when those scares happen, I get an even bigger effect because I've like totally forgotten that I'm watching a horror movie. Um, and I'm like thinking about the characters and what's like them and where they are in the moment.
And it's like all films, isn't it? No matter what gender you watch, if you're not invested in the character in the film,
Hmm.
you don't watch the film. Because if many film you watch about half an hour, you think this is far too slow. I can't watch this. I've not got invested in any of the characters at all. Even if it's a character you should really hate, but you're thinking, oh, I'll watch it because I quite like him. I mean, me and my mum, when my mum was alive, we used to watch a lot of the soaps. And our favourite character is JR in Dallas because
Hmm.
we always used to think, oh, what's he going to do this week? Yeah, it was that sense of, oh, what they're going to do. We always knew that he was going to do something, and the bad guy was going to beat the good guy most of the time.
Yeah.
But I mean, we just like watching it for that reason. There's nothing wrong with that because that's how wrestling works, and I love wrestling because it's that good guy versus bad guy scenario.
What do you think about, like, when I think about some of the wrestling, it's interesting you mentioned that because I think it gets a bad rep. And maybe to some degree so does horror. I guess when I think about it, all genres can. When it comes down to, they say it's like that cheesy factor. It's like, is it bad writing? Is it just it's the medium doesn't fit the element, where like they just, it's a not a good fit. Like, what, when we think about the cheesy stories out there, um, maybe they're just too predictable.
Well, I think I think what people forget is there's no new stories as such. It's been every story that you've ever watched has been done before.
Hmm.
There's only so many storylines you can come up with. That's run out eventually. But it's always good if you get behind if someone plays a really good bad guy in wrestling, people really go to a stage and think, oh my god, I really hope he gets beaten, or you get really invested in a good guy. You think, you cheer and you get really invested. A bit like the gladiators, but without the death.
Hmm. So what's next for you with any projects that you're currently working on? Where are you headed?
But I'm just carrying on doing my podcasting. Writing. I don't write books so much now because it's such a long-winded process. It takes a lot out of you. Plus,
Mhm.
getting up at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning writing a book is not very conducive to your wedding, marriage. And when people just, your wife goes, "What are you doing up?" I'm writing a book. Go to bed. Oh, yeah, wait a minute. Then 2 hours later, you don't because you've run out of that idea. You've just got that idea going, I just come up with an idea, then I was going to write it down and I've forgotten what I'm going to write.
It's
But
funny.
I just carry on doing what I do, that's all.
And where can we find you? If people want to reach out, how can people hear your podcast, and um, how can people find you?
Well, it's quite easy. You just look up Ghostman Radio Station and it'll come up on Google and any other book browsers available. And you can look up my name, Mark Anthony Raines, Raines, and not Anthony without the H, just a T. And you'll see my horror shows, you'll see my cartoons, you'll see lots of my video stuff. My YouTube channel is the same, Mark Anthony Raines, aka Ghostman. My blog is Ghostman on Blogspot. Cartoons available on Gonzo Weekly. And basically, I do a bit of singing on the side, but I wouldn't. My wife says the cats would rather drown themselves backwards with earmuffs.
Oh my
I don't know what
gosh.
she's trying to say.
Oh
But
my.
but
um,
I don't know. But no, I give it. I'm not going to say I'm. I just like to do it because I like to do it. It's. I think everyone should have it go at it. It doesn't matter. You don't have to be X Factor um, material. I mean, the first most powerful song I ever wrote was about my near death experience, which I called "Not My Time in Heaven," which
mm,
obviously on the title. And I was lucky enough that a musical group that I interviewed some time ago called Electric Mud let me use one of their bits of music with my song. I asked them permission first, obviously I didn't just do it, but they kindly lent me the track so I could put my words to it. And it, and I was very nice of them to do that. And I always appreciate that because
hmm,
it's always nice when other fellow artists can collaborate with you, even
hmm,
though they don't have to.
hmm. Absolutely. All right. Well, I'm going to make sure that we put some links in our show notes to all of your a variety of your things, so people can reach out, can check it out. Um, I appreciate you being here with us. Do you have a send off for us as we wrap up the show?
Well, yeah, as you've been on my show, you always like I like to ask people for what is your unique sign off. Well, Mark, what is your unique sign off? Thank you for asking, Mark. Well, my unique sign off is this: I've been on Elizabeth Mill's shows today, and I had a good chat from the lady in the USA. It's sunny and bright over there, but it's just cloudy and dull as it is always in the UK. But some days we'll come and meet. We'll have a meet and a greet and a cup of tea or coffee and some cakes or some cookies, as you would say. And please come and listen to me and my podcast and don't let me talk to myself. It's not so lonely. I'm all right, I don't mind a bit. If you like a bit of horror, you like a bit of reading, you like a bit of Doctor Who, you like a bit of everything. I call myself popcorn for the brain. You take a little bit, you might know a little bit more. Or you might put it back in the packet and throw it in the bin. But hey, that's just life.
Popcorn for the brain. I love it. Thank you so much, Mark, for being here today.
That's okay.
And for us, our normal send off, as always, is you are never stuck, you are never lost, and you are never alone. At any given moment, you can use your own power to pivot, make a new choice, and start again. And with that, I will see everybody on the next episode. Bye, everybody. Thanks, Mark.
Ta-ta, everybody. Ta-ta.